Mic is on. Introduce the staff. The staff is Lori Casey. No, Lori's not here. I'm just reading. She will be here. She'll be the lady coming in late. And the gentleman here is Dylan Pipinich, Assistant Planning Director. This is Carol Laird, the Secretary, who record the minutes of the meeting. The board members that are present, on my far right is Todd Collins, Tyler Schaefer, Lauren Burmeister, myself, Dave Wing. Next to me here is Julie Jackshaw, and then far corner is Garrett Craig. This is just a meeting that we're scheduled to vote on the 2 special use permit applications that were before us that we covered the last meeting and heard presentations on. So we can jump right into that. The public portion of the meeting have been closed and no further testimony will be received. So the first matters that we have to vote on are special use permit 2111 and variance 217, special use permit by Beehive Homes. And Beehive Homes is represented today. So has everybody had a chance to review all the materials that we covered the last meeting and prepared to have some comments? Is there any comments with regard to this? Any board discussion?
Go ahead. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, with regards to this special use permit for Beehive Homes, I really don't have an issue with it. I think it actually fits where it should be or where it wants to be. It's a multifamily area, and these houses tend to look like multifamily dwellings that actually are a little bit nicer. I've driven past some of Mr. Hildreth's other Beehive properties, and they're all kept up very well. They're very nice. You really wouldn't even know they're not just a normal house in a neighborhood, and they fit in well. I've actually done some work around these for some of his neighbors, and they have the nicest things to say about him, his facility, and the people who live there. So that being said, I'm in support of the special use. With regards to the variance that would come after that, if we were to approve it, I would like to, I know we hate doing this as a board, but I feel like we've got to start somewhere with getting sidewalks, curb and gutter going. I know they're expensive. I know there's sometimes a hindrance to these projects to get them off the ground, but personally, I would just like to see us start somewhere. I know it would be nice to have in that area. It's a place that's highly trafficked. So I would just like to keep landscaping, sidewalk stuff per ordinance if we could. But I am definitely in support of the special use permit for the building itself.
Thanks, Tyler. Any other comments by board members?
Mr. Chairman,
Todd?
I echo Tyler's comments about the special use permit. From what I've seen of the Beehive facilities, they're very nice. They're kept up well. I think they will do a great job, and you know, it fits in well with the surrounding area. So on the special use permit, I would vote for that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Todd.
Mr. Chairman, fellow board members, I too agree that it's a great facility. The Beehive Homes are very well taken care of. I agree with Tyler's comments, though. I would like to see the sidewalks in place. That's one thing on the request that I would not want to take off of the request. I'd like to leave that condition in place. I drove it both ways, going both ways, and looked at it, and I do agree. It's sad that there isn't more sidewalks on that side of the street, but as Tyler said, we do have to start somewhere, and this project would be a great start.
Yes, Lauren.
Mr. Chairman, just to build on the other comments, I fully agree. And regarding the sidewalk, I do have some concern that the primary sidewalk that I believe MDT is constructed is on the opposite side of the street, and I have concerns about people essentially jaywalking, trying to get from, you know, if they're walking on one side to the other, and so I don't think we can make a condition per se, because it is an MDT thing, but strongly encourage the developer to work with MDT to get a crosswalk in there, because I think the closest one is Elizabeth Warren, which is the better part of 3 blocks away. So I think that's something that needs to be encouraged. I don't think, like I said, that we can require it, but just wanted to make that comment.
Yeah, it should be easy enough to put a crosswalk in. Yeah, I agree with you. Garrett, did you have any comments?
Mr. Chairman, I would agree with the rest of the board members. I think with regards to the special use permit, I think it's a great project. I think it does fit well with the surrounding area. I would agree with the variance request as well, as I think that the landscaping requirement should be a condition of granting approval.
Okay. Well, I personally agree with the other board members with regard to the special use permit and the variance. So now in a position to take a motion. Somebody want to make a motion?
Can we do them both at the same time, or probably do them separate?
I think
Okay.
separate is best, yeah.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve special use 21-000011. And forgive me if I put too many or not enough zeros on there.
I'll second the motion, Mr. Chairman.
I skipped the zeros myself. It just
Yes,
is
I
too
think that's what
confusing.
I'm going to do. It's good precedent.
Okay, is there, and Todd has seconded the motion, so we can now vote.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah,
could we clarify the vote, please? Because staff did have some conditions that were recommended with regard to the special use permit. And so whether or not you're conditionally approving with those conditions as written.
I understood we were approving with the conditions.
That was my intent.
And
Mine
I'm
as
sorry
well.
that we didn't specify that. We should have. So approved with the conditions that are recommended by the board.
Just one second.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, so the draft conditions of approval that I gave to you guys at the last meeting was it addresses the landscaping and the landscaping variances as well. So I think that we should maybe go through that in detail, your
Yes.
conditions. So that we're straight.
I guess, Mr. Chairman, just for some clarification, we gave the board draft conditions to the extent that they wanted to approve this. So we would need to go through those so that the applicant knows what those draft conditions are and whether they have any questions on them
Sure,
or agreement.
yeah, no,
Sorry for this
that's
confusion,
excellent.
but
That's the way we should do it, I agree.
Here, it wasn't in.
So,
So
I'll hand you back.
there was 4 draft conditions. One was, prior to the issuance of a building permit, the applicant shall present the parking plan for review and approval. At minimum, the plan shall meet the parking requirements of Chapter 1740, off-street loading and parking of the Butte-Silver Road Municipal Code. The applicant shall submit a cost estimate from a licensed contractor for the materials and installation of the approved parking plan. This cost estimate will be used as the paving bond plus 10%. This bond can be in the form of cash, letter credit, surety bond, certified check, or other guaranteed negotiable instrument. Number 2, address the landscaping variances. So prior to the issuance of a building permit, the applicant shall submit a detailed landscaping plan to the department staff for review and approval. The landscaping plan shall comply with the landscaping provisions as described in Chapter 1738, special provisions of the Butte-Silver Municipal Code, but then listed with exception to the variances requested. The landscaping plan shall also incorporate the location and specification for a paved walking trail in lieu of sidewalk, curb and gutter, and shall provide the adequate buffer to shield headlights from the parking lot towards the homes to the east. The applicant shall submit a cost estimate from a licensed landscape contractor for the materials and installation of the approved landscaping plan. This cost estimate will be used as the landscaping bond plus 10%. The bond can be in form of cash, letter of credit, surety bond, certified check, or other guaranteed negotiable instrument. Number 3 was the applicant shall ensure that all structures have been constructed in compliance with all applicable building, electrical, mechanical, fire, and health codes. In addition, they shall secure all necessary permits from Butte-Silver and abide by all other regulations of the zoning ordinance. And number 4 was any future business expanses or changes in business will require further review from the Zoning Board of Adjustment.
Thank you, Dylan. And just to confirm with regard to your motion, Tyler, it was made with those draft conditions in mind?
Correct, Mr. Chairman.
And your second was made with those draft conditions in mind also, Todd?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. I think we are now in a position to vote.
Mr. Chairman, can I just clarify one thing?
You bet.
In that condition, it said a paved walkway. Is that the same thing that you're thinking, Tyler? A paved walkway versus a sidewalk?
We have curb and gutter in that, right? Okay.
So to clarify, the applicant had proposed a gravel walking trail instead of sidewalk, curb and gutter, and staff in the report had recommended a paved walking trail instead of a gravel walking trail
With curb.
without curb and gutter.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask one
Yes.
question of staff? So regarding the curb and gutter, none of Continental is curbed, and it has ditches running along the street. I'm not sure in this particular instance that curbing wouldn't actually make the condition worse. Can you comment on that? Is curbing proposed, or no curb, does the staff agree that no curb is the right way to go on this, from a stormwater perspective?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Burmeister, yeah, in the report, we had discussed that the intent of that was a hard surfaced walking path for multimodal traffic, which is why that we recommended the paved walking trail instead of the proposed gravel walking trail in lieu of sidewalk, curb and gutter, because of the roadside ditch storm infrastructure
Yeah.
there.
So, Mr. Tyler, or Mr. Schaefer, and Mr. Collins, I would like to see a sidewalk in place of a paved walking trail, but I'll honor whatever you put in your motion.
Well, I think per Lauren's comments, I don't think it's not gonna work, really.
I would also add that the existing trail is all asphalt, or the things along Continental, so in this particular instance, I typically would fully agree that concrete would be ideal over asphalt, but in this condition, asphalt would be more consistent with the adjoining stuff. No, I personally don't have a preference, but
I think personally, I'm gonna be okay with asphalt paved walkway.
Okay.
Just to clarify, and I'm sorry for the confusion on that.
That's okay. Just
Well,
want to make sure we know what we're voting on. And at this point, it's a motion to approve a special use permit with the draft conditions that have been articulated by the staff, and confirming that the paved walkway would be asphalt paved and not concrete paved. And I understand that to be the motion is,
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry, I'm just kind of
oh, that's
reading
okay.
this in a little more detail. But yeah, that was my intent. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Well, and Mr. Chairman, if I may, you know, the walking trail on the west side of Continental is pretty dangerous, if you ask me. There's no curb. You know, the markers, the candles that they put up there get wiped out pretty regularly. I don't know if the city or the county, what would happen if someone got killed there. And that's what curbs are for, basically is a delineation. Not that I'm for the curbs down there, because there's none anywhere around, but, you know, there's a kind of walking a tightrope there. And I don't know what the ramifications would be if somebody was on their walkway and got plowed over by a car and there wasn't a curb, or some kind of a safety device there. Just something to think about. I like to ramble. So anyhow, I think the paved walkway is probably as good as the concrete.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask one more question of staff? So on the proposed, based on the layout of Continental and the roadside ditch, is this trail actually going immediately adjacent to Continental, or would it be to the east of the roadside ditch?
Can you bring up their site plan? Actually, I don't know if their site plan.
When I traveled the area, it looked like it would have to go above the ditch.
That's what I was thinking, but I
Yeah.
can't quite remember.
And the condition says incorporate the location and specifications for review and approval by Public Works.
Okay, so that would be decided when they start working with Public Works.
Okay. Seems appropriate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it does.
Okay, so we've had our,
Just to clarify everything, everyone is okay with the conditions as outlined here by the staff. That's where I'm shooting for, even though I'm not saying that, I guess, but I apologize. I am burnt out on zoning board and I can't take it anymore. So I just want to clarify, my motion was to approve with conditions as outlined by staff.
that was my understanding,
Okay, thank you.
That was my understanding for the second as well.
and for the second as well.
Yes, sir.
So we now, at this point, do have a motion that we can vote on.
Excellent.
Thank you, Julie. All 6 votes are for the motion, which means that your application for the special use permit has been approved, and you'll be receiving a letter to that effect. So thank you on that part. And now we do have the variance to, because that was only a vote on motion on the special use permit. So the board's thoughts with regard to the variance, 21-7. Skip the zeros.
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple comments in regard to this, and specifically to concerns around its encroachment on the flight path. Understanding that FAA has, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't listen.
Mr. Chairman, could staff read us that again? Because we just, I think, addressed some of those things, correct?
Yeah.
So I just want to know what's left on this motion.
Do you want me to go? Did you bring this? Yeah. Mr. Chairman, if I could refer you all to your agenda. Below are the variances that the applicant was requesting under variance 21-7. So they were requesting some relief from the landscaping buffer requirements, the sidewalk curb and gutter, which you, within your last motion, and that have voted to make that asphalt walking trail. You have front and corner yards.
That's the sidewalk.
Okay, so it was the landscaping buffer, and that was, they were proposing to, instead of installing a 3-foot high wall for headlight shields, are proposing to, you don't have that here. So, I'm sorry, it's not written in here.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, so instead of the 3-foot wall, they were proposing a
Thank you.
vegetative buffer instead for the headlight shields. They didn't state the density that they didn't propose a density for to use vegetation as the headlight buffer instead of the wall. But the ordinance, as interpreted literally, requires that 3-foot headlight shield around the parking lot. And they had proposed using bushes and shrubs instead.
Mr. Chairman, a question for staff?
Yes.
On that, so you're saying the density requirements per the ordinance, if we grant the shrubs, would basically require a solid clustering of shrubs all the way across, or no? Do you know what the specific density would be?
No, the ordinance requires a wall, a masonry or wood wall, 3 feet tall, around the, it's actually on the property line to shield headlights from the parking lot going to the west. And they, in lieu of that, have proposed putting vegetation and shrubbery around the parking lot instead of on the property boundary, because, one, because of the slope of the lot, and 2, block those headlights.
And Mr. Chairman, Mr. Pipinich, the neighboring developments don't have walls. Did they get variances for that, or?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Burmeister, the apartment complexes, their buildings block their parking lots. They
That's
are
right.
more
Okay.
they're closer to the interstate
Thank you.
with
for
their
that.
buildings
Yep.
closer to Continental.
Okay, with regard to that, I'll just initiate the comments by saying I typically prefer vegetation as opposed to walls. So I think that that's acceptable. I like plants.
Mr. Chairman,
Julie does.
fellow board members, I do really like plants, except in a case like this, I would vote for the 3-foot wall. I drove that in the way that the headlights will hit that homes across the way. And if the density of that shrubbery isn't kept up or maintained, or, you know, a section of it dies or whatever, there's just no control to mitigate that. So I know I'm usually the green girl that likes the trees and stuff, but in this case, I would like to see the 3-foot wall as per code.
Okay. I kind of like the vegetation, so we got a little bit of a difference here. Somebody can make a motion with regard to that, or further comments, of course.
Mr. Chairman, that is hard. I tend to agree with everyone on this, which is a great place to be. I would almost prefer greenery, but I guess I would like maybe some teeth behind the wording of the conditions so that we could make sure it is dense, make sure it's kept up, so that if it wasn't, we could maybe have something to go back on. But I do understand what Julie's saying, and it makes sense. Is there a way we could word it that we can get it a proper density that mimics a hard wall, and I guess hope that it stays intact?
So, you looking for language from the staff then, Tyler?
Mr. Chairman, I was looking in regards to the maintenance, there is a maintenance section in the landscaping, so that you could put that in your condition on that. For the density, I think you would kind of probably have to say maybe specific of how far it would, like shrubbery or whatever they intend has to be planted apart, because it will grow up a little bit over time. And so I was kind of looking for the maintenance section first of the thing, and then.
Sorry to throw you on the spot there. If we could have some sort of teeth in it and placate me a little bit.
Yeah, I would be happier with that as well.
Just a thought, maybe rather than trying to specify
So,
how close together they're planted, which would be dependent on the different species, maybe a no more than
yeah,
1 foot gap in between, or no gap between, that kind of, go ahead, sorry.
Mr. Chairman, we do have a section, it's not for this particular, but it is a landscaping buffer, and I'll just read it. It says, there shall be provided trees and shrubs of sufficient height and density to effectively screen the property. So you could, to effectively screen the headlights, you could maybe use something to that nature, and then they can supply that within their landscaping plan,
Okay,
their detailed landscaping
okay,
plan.
yeah.
Okay, I like that.
Thank you, Ms. Casey.
And then I would recommend, then you could say this this vegetative buffer shall meet the maintenance requirement of section 17.38.052.
Quick work, thank you.
She's fast.
She's good.
She's good.
You okay with
We should get you a promotion. I know. Take me with you.
Promotion to retirement?
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion, we approve variance 21-7, with the added condition that the landscape buffer, includes trees and shrubs of a proper density to shield the property per 17.38.052.
Is there a second to the motion?
that.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Todd.
Can we modify that just a little bit? So there's two different things. One is the density and the other is the maintenance.
Oh,
So the section you quoted is the maintenance section.
oh, okay, that's the
But you had
maintenance.
the first part pretty much correct, except for,
Do I need any numbers on that?
no numbers, just of sufficient density to shield headlights.
These are big words for me. Okay. Yes, I guess I'll remake that motion that we have trees and shrubs for the proper density or sufficient. And then for the maintenance per section 17.38.052. Is that closer? Okay, thank you. I'm on a roll today.
Yeah.
And your second still stands, Todd?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We can now vote.
I think it's the middle of the day thing. We shouldn't do any more of these, apparently.
There's no Subway sandwiches for us, no. Would you?
Oh, thank you. You're right there all the time. There are 5 votes for the motion and 1 vote against the motion. So the motion has been approved, and the variance that you have requested will be in effect. You'll be receiving a letter from the planning staff to that effect. And we've all thought that this is a great project, and Beehive Homes does a great job, so good luck on this project. Thank you. Thanks. The next matter that we have is special use application 2112. Application by Ronald and Linda DeWitt and Chad Crahill, and I see that they are here tonight. So, does the board have any comments with regard to this?
I do, Mr. Chairman. I just don't see a hardship here for the landowners. They've been going along fine without this project. And it's really unfortunate that There's a neighbor across the street who built his home there, and this would greatly impact their view shed. And this area is pretty sparsely populated. There was only one person in opposition, and that person was happened to be the one that would be greatly affected. Again, and there were actually no proponents other than the developer and the homeowners. So I would, I think they probably should go back to the drawing board, even having one neighbor who's it's going to affect greatly and probably affect their property value. I would not vote to approve this.
Any further comments by the board?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a comment. With this project, I understand the need for cell service. We all depend on them all day. As we know, the networks are getting overloaded. We need more towers if we're going to continue down the path of using our phones for everything, which we know we are. That being said, I think this, as proposed, to be rather frank, I think it's ugly. The prison-type fencing it just doesn't go in a neighborhood. Although the neighborhood is sparsely populated, that doesn't change the fact that it is a neighborhood, that people live there, that people need to enjoy their property. The height of it obviously requires the constant or near constant lighting of the tower. I think could pose a problem to the neighbors. I think that's annoying. I think there are other places in this area that can handle this and kind of get out of the view shed of other people. And I would just encourage the developer to possibly get back to the drawing board, find a little better location that still satisfies the needs of the corporations that need the tower. But I think, as the applicant stated, they had tried to work with the Butte-Silver boat to get it located at the is it the pump station nearby, or the water company building anyway. I think that would be a better location. It would benefit the city from maybe possibly renting a little bit of land that they're not really using for any other productive purpose, and probably gets it a little more out of the sight of the few neighbors that are there that are concerned about it. So with that being said, I'm not really in favor of this as it's proposed.
Thank you, Tyler.
Mr. Chairman, my concern is primarily the potential effect on the airport. The airport is critical to our community, and as we all know, our airport is a little bit unique in that it requires line of sight in order to be able to land and take off. The application says that they've gotten FAA approval, however, they're only 20 feet outside the buffer, and as we heard from the gentleman at the last meeting, that is very close to the buffer, and not other towers that he's built, this would be the closest one to that buffer. And so I think there's a high potential, especially in the winter months, that this cell tower could actually result in the inability for planes to land or take off in Butte, and that is not in the best interest of the community. It's a public safety concern, and I'll follow that up to say the developer is looking, or looked at this property, as I understand it from his comments, based on it was the closest to what the cell companies had asked for, but he hadn't done any deep look into other potential locations, so I do think there is potential for other locations, and as such, I don't support this special use permit right now.
Okay, thank you. Garrett?
I think I'm in agreement on not supporting the special use. I think primarily, kind of echoing Lauren's comments about the airport. I do have concern about the line of sight issues with planes coming into the airport, and I do not think that 20-foot, being within 20 feet of that height buffer is sufficient. So I would agree that I think other options need to be considered for this cell tower.
Thank you.
I want to thank both the applicants and Chad for bringing the project forward. I drove up there, I drove around the corner to kind of get a feel of what you'd look at as you come around the corner, and I echo a lot of the same concerns with, not so much the appearance of it, I mean, maybe if you could set it back, make it look a little nicer, I think that that would be great, but I do worry about the line of sight with our airport. We're trying to expand our air services into the community, and I don't want to have you put this up and then us have to remove it due to some circumstance in the future. So perhaps you could go back, take a look at, you know, a different plan or another location and come back to us if you have to. But I do know that we need the service in the area, so I appreciate your effort.
Okay. Well, it does have much more of an adverse visual impact than, say, some solar panels sitting there. So,
Too soon.
so I concur with the fellow board members. Ready for a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve special use 21-12. And just to clarify, if you're for the motion, you're for the project. If you vote against the motion, you are not in favor of the project.
Oh, I'll second that.
And
Sorry.
again, the understanding is if you oppose to the project, you will vote against the motion. Okay? Thank you, Julie. All 6 votes are against the motion to approve. That means that the application has been denied, and you'll be receiving a letter from the planning staff to that effect. You do have the right to appeal our decision to district court, and an appeal would have to be filed within 30 days, with day 1 being tomorrow. And so thank you. I do have just a little bit of other business I'd like to talk about. I mean, and that relates to what we talked about before with these special use permits. And as Tyler stated before, it seems better to do it this way so like Beehive can get busy constructing their facility. Do we all think that that's a good idea still? I mean, the construction season in Butte is short.
Yeah, especially, I mean, if Beehive can't get going here real soon, they're gonna miss a whole season, so.
So we'll continue to do it this way?
Yeah, and Mr. Chairman, in regard to conditions, what staff can do is put the proposed conditions in your package with the report so that you have them ahead of time. That might clear up some of the, yeah, and, yeah, so just with the change of everything that we're doing, I think we can make that change also so that you have draft conditions in your package when they go out.
Okay, thank you, Laurie. Any other business? None? Everybody knows that the Basin Creek has appealed our decision?
I have not heard that, no.
Okay.
Kinda had an idea it was coming, but.
Well, I don't know if they formally filed anything, Laurie? Or
Mr.
just told us they
Chairman,
are going to?
yeah, they gave us a notice that they were going to, but they have not formally filed. They have asked for a FOIA, which is a Freedoms of Information Act, for all of our emails back and forth. And so our county attorney and IT and folks are working through that process now.
Okay. So it seems like they're serious, so we'll see what happens.
And the only other business, Mr. Chairman, is, because some of you guys I know don't check your emails, but I did send out an invite for the party for August 6th at my house. It's a Friday night. Dylan's looking for a partner, Lauren, and I have a new game, so.
A new game? Sure. Put a. Bring your camper?
It's been a really tough year, not gonna lie. We need a subcommittee for our committee.
We are adjourned.